Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. Oklahoma producers have been cutting wheat much later than usual this year because of the unusually wet spring. And it's been especially challenging in eastern Oklahoma, where the Oklahoma Wheat Commission says as of July 1st, they're at about the halfway mark with harvest. Today, SUNUP's Curtis Hare takes us to Wagoner County to meet the producer who's weathered not only rains, but also flooding to make a crop this year.
At Livesay Orchards, peaches have made this farming family famous. While tourists from all over come to Wagoner County for the fruit, the Livesay family grows just about every Oklahoma crop you can think of. Blackberries, apples, squash, corn, soybeans, and even a crop not typically grown in eastern Oklahoma, wheat.
There's a lot of different jobs to be done throughout the year, and it also makes it a little easier a lot of the times if you have different weather, if it's dry or if it's wet. If it's bad for one crop you're working on, hopefully it might be good for another crop you're going to work on later, so it can kind of take the edge off of some weather events sometimes.
Brian Livesay manages the field crops at the farm. If having a diverse production takes the edge off of weather events, it sure came in handy this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not unusual for us to have enough rain. It keeps us out of the field a while, but this year it kept us out of the field on and on and on, and then we'd have maybe a day or two, and then it'd rain again, and it was just a really abnormally wet year for how long it stayed wet.
In the past 180 days, about 30 inches of rain fell in Wagoner County. To make matters worse, Brian's production sits right next to the Arkansas River.
Well, about 15 to 20% of our wheat acres got flooded out, and they were underwater, and we're just not going to be able, some of it's sprouting, we're just not going to be able to cut it and sell it, really. And same on the corn, about 15 to 20% of what the corn we planted got flooded. We had to replant that, but we were able to replant it. On the wheat, it's late enough, we just couldn't do anything with it, really.
Yeah, we're standing probably, in the neighborhood of about 100 yards off of the riverbank here from the Arkansas River, and in Wagoner County, we have two river basins that run through our county. So we have a lot of, and a lake also, Lake Fort Gibson, we have a lot of water resources here that we have to deal with.
I haven't seen anything like this. I was born in 1990. In 1986, that was the last time we had a major flood of the Arkansas River, and my dad remembers that very well. And I think the water was about the same height. It flooded some of the same areas, but this year they opened up the gates really slowly. And in '86, they had to open them up in a big hurry, so it really cut up the fields a lot worse. They had to do a whole lot of dirt work to try to level stuff back up.
Unfortunately, we are a reservoir that drains a lot of the country in Oklahoma and even into parts of Kansas. So when it rains in Kansas, we basically have to deal with that runoff too that comes down the verdigris. And that's the issues that we're facing right now. And our rivers are still running full, and every time we come up with a 3 or 4 inch rain, we have flash flood problems right now.
While the flooding caused Brian to lose some of his crop, it's also impacted where he can take his grain after it's harvested.
Well, our local port we normally haul stuff to is the Port of Duncan between Coweta and Wagoner, but it got flooded up into the bins, all the bins, and it's kind of a smaller port, so it's not like a high priority one to get fixed. So it's not running yet, but the one down at Weber's Falls, they've gotten back open. So we've been hauling down there, and we've been emptying out our bin, running back down to Weber, but it is maybe 30 minutes farther than the Port of Duncan. I don't know exactly, but it's really pretty good because it was never really drought stressed at all. So what we do have is maybe not our best yield, but it's still going to be a pretty good yield overall where we're able to cut.
Brian still has a few hundred acres left to cut, and he's hoping for a few more consecutive dry days. With all the stress with the wheat this year, it won't be long until he can shift his focus to another crop. And he wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, I don't really remember, but my mom said at kindergarten graduation, whenever they had everybody say what they wanted to be, or they announced what everybody wanted to be, I'd said I wanted to be a farmer back then. And I really don't know if I hadn't grown up on a farm, what in the world I would have done with my life, because there's just not a whole lot else that appeals to me as far as something that I can do as a job that makes money.
In Wagoner County, I'm Curtis Hare.
We're here now with Kim Anderson, our crop marketing specialist. Kim, we're basically down to the last 10% of harvest overall. The big question, How did it all turn out?
Well, I think it turned out relatively good. We could have had better protein, but and slightly better test weight, but I think our test weight's going to be up around 59 pounds, and if we can get 59 or better, we're pretty good with test weight. Protein a little low, but at least it's not as low as it was back in 14 and 15 when it was below 11. Probably going to come in 11.5, 11.8, something like that. Bad news on wheat as you go on further north or in other surrounding areas, the protein may not be as good, but Oklahoma crop, more bushels than expected, I think, and quality acceptable, not exceptional.
But pretty good, especially considering all the challenges with the weather.
Oh, you bet, and the protein's a little low, but early reports are it's a good milling quality protein. It may not be as high as we like, but at least it's a good quality milling protein.
Let's expand it out and look at the U.S. picture and how things are looking overall in the country.
Well, if you look at the overall U.S. wheat production, the condition report came out a little higher than expected, and I think that had some impact on the market this last week. But the crops look relatively good. Slightly higher wheat production for the United States than we had this time last year.
And then, of course, the world picture. Let's look at everything.
Well, the world's got a record crop coming on. I know the U.S., our production's right at 1.9 billion bushels. The world crop, 2.7 plus billion. Another record crop coming on in the world, unless something happens weather-wise. And of course, we've got in about 25% of the world's crop right now, so we got another 75 to go.
Let's talk corn now. The USDA planting report is in. How is corn impacting wheat prices?
Boy, that was really the talk in the market this week. You know, those corn planted acres came in over 91 million acres as expected, 89 or so. There's word, you know, does the market believe the corn? You know, remember last week we were talking about corn prices high, relative 5-year high, and that we were feeding wheat. I think with if these more planted acres are there and the corn's in good condition, I think the market's afraid we're not going to feed as much wheat, and I think that had a negative impact on our wheat prices.
What else is impacting prices?
Well, you got to look at what's going on in the Black Sea. I'd say, you know, right now Ukraine's got about 15% of their harvest in. They're looking at a record crop, about 1.1 billion. It may be their first time for over 1 billion bushels. The Russian crop higher than last year, lower than 2 years ago, but it's coming in 2.8, 2.9. Together, Ukraine and Russia, about 4 billion bushel crop. The thing I was watching this week, and I've seen it over the last few weeks, is Romania has exported 2 cargoes of, or sold 2 cargoes of wheat to Egypt. I tried to look up your Romania's wheat exports. I couldn't find them on our USDA records. So, you know, that's telling you what's going on in the world with wheat production and wheat exports. We've got Russia, Ukraine, the Black Sea area. We got Romania. We got everybody and their dog entering the export market with wheat, and naturally that's having a negative impact on our prices.
You mentioned kind of the negative. Is there any hope, something we can look forward to?
Well, it's got to be in the world. Romania, they sold that wheat $196 a metric ton. Russia sold around $195 a metric ton into FOB Egypt. That's about $4 plus wheat in Oklahoma. That's about where we are. I think our prices fell because we were above the export market. I think we're near that level now. It's dry, it's hot in Russia. Hopefully they'll lose some acres and lose some production there, and prices, if we lose some crop in Russia, then prices could come back up.
Considering this scenario you painted overall, what marketing strategy do you offer for Oklahoma producers?
Well, I felt much better about this when we had $4.60 to $4.70 wheat rather than $4.10 to $4.15. But you know, you look back over history, over the last 11 years, you sell the wheat before September 30 or August 30, really. You know, 9 out of those 11 years you sell early. I think if go ahead and move some wheat, I'd move some wheat into the market. I might buy some calls to cover that, but I think you need to stagger it in the market at least over the next 3 months. If we're going to have higher prices, it's going to be out in the November, December time period, but the odds of that are extremely small.
Okay, Kim, thanks a lot. Now we want to take a look back at some of our favorite stories from harvest from over the years. First up, our chance encounter with some custom cutters from South Africa. The Garfield County Fairgrounds in Enid is the staging area for the cutting crew that caravanned into town just the day before. Young men from South Africa here in America, working for Olson Custom Farms out of Minnesota.
I'm from the Limpopo. It's up against the border of Botswana and Mozambique.
22-year-old Chris Pistorius is the foreman. His family has a cattle ranch and grows a little bit of tobacco back home.
I'm in charge of a whole crew. It's 2 guys with semis, 1 grain cart and 2 combines. Okay. And I run a combine myself.
This is his 4th Oklahoma harvest.
It's a different experience every year. It's never the same.
It's also good money for a guy his age.
For every dollar we make here, we make 7 back home with the exchange rate.
After this equipment's organized, the crew heads south to El Reno to get started and then work their way back north.
We'll start in El Reno and then start working up wherever stuff's ready and start going to Kansas and do the whole experience up to Canada and go back to Minnesota and do a fall harvest there.
Finally, they wrap up the fall harvesting corn and beans. For Chris and the other guys, it's an opportunity to make a living in the U.S. and lay the groundwork for a permanent career running their family farms back in South Africa.
Those producers with fall calving herds have recently weaned those fall-born calves, and they'll be saving some replacement heifers out of those recently weaned calves. Those replacement heifers are going to have to grow enough to go into a breeding season, say in late November, perhaps early December. Those replacement heifers need to gain about 1.5 pounds between now and the start of that breeding season. As they go through the summer, in most of Oklahoma, they're going to have adequate forage to graze on, but we want to remember that as we go further into July, August, and September, that forage is going to get drier, hotter, and more mature, and it's going to lose some of its protein content. These young cattle will need just a little bit of additional protein in order to best utilize that standing forage that's available to them. That's where a good supplementation program for these young replacement heifers can really be beneficial. You know, for years we've talked about the Oklahoma Gold program for stocker cattle in late summer grazing here in this state. Well, it works the same way for those replacement heifers that we're going to breed next fall. Putting together a package with a small amount of a high protein supplement will help those young heifers and the microbes in their rumen to digest that more mature forage as we go into the late summer, early fall months. What I'm talking about is feeding someplace around 1 to 2 pounds of a 38 to say 45% crude protein supplement. In some cases, we may want to add the feed ingredient and ionophore, such things as lasalicid or monensin. Those particular ingredients will help those replacement heifers do a little better job of digesting that forage. Plus, they will help in terms of preventing coccidiosis in those young cattle. Also, research back in the 70s done at Texas A&M indicated that heifers that received an ionophore for about 100 days reached puberty on the average about 2 weeks earlier than did counterparts that got exactly the same supplement, same pasture, but did not get the ionophore. And so that could be important in terms of getting a high percentage of those heifers cycling at the start of a breeding season, especially if you're going to use artificial insemination. Keep that in mind. I think it'll help in terms of getting a higher percentage of these heifers bred, and you'll be on your way to a good group of replacement heifers to go into your herd in the future. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
Now to another wheat harvest favorite, this one from 2016 in Noble County.
Things are pausing for a moment.
Improvising on the farm. Do a lot of that, it seems like.
For what turned out to be just a fuel line. This is Pete. His brother Chance is still cutting while Pete is fixing the wheat truck. They were paused, but not stopped. Now the old wheat truck is back in business and Pete is back in the place that he loves. The driver's seat of a Gleaner combine.
I'm the fourth generation. My dad Bob was farming all this prior to that. And then my grandpa Rex was prior to him, and then Andrew was the original Matheson that came to Oklahoma. He immigrated from Denmark to Beloit, Kansas, and then in the land run he came down and settled what's our home place. And then he built the house and the barns and all that's been the main operation since the land run. This year I've got about 850 acres of wheat. I haven't added tickets yet, but the Ruby Lee side of it, I think it's going to be in the upper 40s, just on based off the number of trucks we took to town.
This one is my favorite. The red one is my nemesis. His grandpa bought it brand new, and so it's had a lot of drivers, and I actually didn't even know how to drive a standard. So Pete's dad and his brother Trenton taught me how to drive a standard. It's a big deal in the little town. Whoever brings in the first load of wheat gets to be in the paper. So, and for years it was always a certain family, and so last year and this year we got to do it. So it's pretty exciting.
This fourth generation of Matheson knows that they're growing a wheat crop on these acres in northern Oklahoma. But they're also digging the roots of their family deeper into the red dirt that they love.
Chance and I have been cutting wheat and doing this, since we were 9 years old. My dad started us out on the grain cart when we were 9. And so the two of us have been doing this together for quite a few years. And it's fun just to get out and be out in the field working with each other. My son will turn 10 in September, and I think next year he'll be mature enough that he can get out and start helping with the grain cart. I would be very blessed if him or my daughter Lily want to do this when I'm old and retired, and I can sit out like my granddad did in a chair and drink tea and watch.
In Noble County, I'm Dave Deacon.
Brittany Crable is no stranger to wheat harvest and no stranger to combines. As she takes me on a couple of rounds, we talk crop quality.
I was hoping that it was like this, hoping and praying it was good, and it's been a blessing to see that it is.
And what it takes to keep this massive machine running smoothly.
Trying to keep it in the wheat and out of the dirt.
That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Across the field, that's also the main objective for Brittany's grandpa, Wayne Crable, who at age 82 spent a lot of years on open-air combines.
Probably still suffering from the days when no cabs on the combine, you sit in that dirt for hours and hours, but I loved it anyway.
That shared love of the land and harvesting what you've sown is already shaping Brittany's future.
Why are you doing this?
I rode with my grandpa and my dad a lot when I was little, and I have memories of falling asleep in that same passenger seat or doing combine math, and slowly but surely I started to fall in love with it.
In fact, 10 years ago this week, her mom Karen snapped this picture of Brittany at age 7, side by side with her dad Jeff in the field.
I've always tried a little bit to play devil's advocate and say you can be anything you want to be, you can go anywhere you want to be, that decision's always yours to make. Just because your ancestors have farmed does not mean you have to. If you want to, we will support you. I've always tried to give her that option, that it was her choice.
A decision Brittany confirmed as Jeff, her father, was dying of cancer.
I remember in the last month he was alive, he turned to me and looked at me and grabbed my hand and said, "Are you going to come back?" And even though I knew before then that I wanted to come back, that really solidified my choice that this is where I need to be.
On the land that would have been her father's and will now go to her. The 5th generation of Crable to harvest wheat on these very acres.
And to be able to pass that on to another generation is very satisfying.
Hard to believe Brittany is only 17 and will be a senior at Hinton High School this fall.
They put their entire lives into working to make these farms run, and to see that pay off, I think, is a great success for them to know that somebody's going to carry on what they love too.
And no doubt that someone, Brittany, is making all those who came before her pretty proud.
Today, at this moment, we are harvesting what's called head rows. It's about the halfway point of the breeding program. This is where we're starting to first really get the separate lines of wheat of where it's segregating. So we're having to harvest single rows to keep it pure and try to really segregate everything.
This is kind of like a retailer going to market. The only difference is we created our own market. So this is the germplasm we created from our breeding program, and there's 61,000 of them. And now we're going through it and shopping. This is my kind of shopping, actually. I can do this kind of shopping. I love to do it, but it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of patience because there's a lot of material to sift through. And once we sift through that, we know what we're going to come back to the market with.
The seed will be increased, and that'll be mowed to simulate cattle grazing. And then after that, it's just going to keep going into bulk increases, and Dr. Carver's going to look at it and decide which one goes on each year until we get down to probably only like 4 or 5 varieties or lines, for instance. And then eventually, if he likes those will be released for the farmers to grow in Oklahoma.
Just to get here, it took 5 years. We had to make the crosses, we had to produce the hybrids, and then let the hybrids go through several years of inbreeding to produce inbred lines that now appear in this field. This is the first time we have a true inbred line that we can look at, evaluate, and decide which ones of those inbred lines we really want to test and put a lot of energy into out in the field across the state.
The overall goal always is just better yields for the farmers, and we're also now working on better end-use quality for bakers and millers, but some of the major things we focus on is getting a better disease resistance and a better insect resistance. Those are the major things. Also always just good sized heads, good quality uses, good protein, just overall good for baking and milling as well. So it's not only good for the farmers, but good for the end use.
We had a misery this year. It was called lack of water. And this crop also suffered from lack of water. And now we have that imprinted on this crop, on this set of germplasm that we can now select for better drought tolerance. So what was really a misery out in the state turned out to be an excellent opportunity for us to select varieties better adapted to these conditions.
Finally today, we enjoy covering wheat harvest across Oklahoma for a lot of reasons, but mostly because of the people we have the honor of meeting. They love and care for their land, oftentimes for generations. This year, Dave Deacon takes us to Cimarron County.
If we could grow it, we didn't have a price. If we had a price, we couldn't grow it. But this year, the price has come up quite a little bit, and it's been a pretty good year.
It's been really good. Its test weights are great, 64, had some 65. Yields are good, 50 to 70 probably. So yeah, for up here, that's real good.
4 generations of Williams have actually farmed this Cimarron County land, which started with KB just after the Dust Bowl.
I was graduated from high school in '37. That's back there when we worried a lot about the dirt blowing if we didn't get the wheat to cover the ground, you know. And we generally sowed, if we got the moisture, we sowed in August back there just to get the ground covered in.
He worked like people today can't even imagine.
Well, it's amazing what he can do.
Yeah, I was never scared of work. And I just enjoyed farming real well.
It's just all he's done for so long that he doesn't want to quit.
Not many of them still got a grandpa that's 100 years old runs a combine, but.
That's right. Troy said that his grandpa is 100 years old and still running a combine. If you've ever been in the cab watching the header glide through the wheat across an open prairie, you know it's a special feeling. It was the possibility to help with one more wheat harvest that motivated KB to fight after he fell and broke his hip a few months ago. He wanted to get back in the driver's seat for his 79th wheat harvest.
Go for it, as long as you can do it.
He spent a lot of time on the combine, and he said as long as he can get in there and sit, why, he was fine.
Well, he just loves it so much, you know. I can't tell him no.
He's probably out through with his farming now, but.
When a seed is planted, harvest is the goal. It's only through love, protection from what the Oklahoma Panhandle can throw at it, and a little rain, that a seed of wheat can grow into something bigger than itself. In a way, KB planted a seed, and it grew into a strong farming family that takes pride in all that it produces. If this is his final season to cut wheat, he sure is making the most of a victory lap for a Cimarron County farmer that grew more than crops. KB Williams grew a legacy.
Really, it's been a pretty good life. I wouldn't change it for anything else.
From just north of Keys in the Oklahoma Panhandle, I'm Dave Deacon.
And that'll do it for us this week. Remember, you can find us anytime at SUNUP.okstate.edu and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone. And remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at sunup.